All right, so today we're tackling addiction, but we're going to look at it from a completely different angle. I mean, what if the struggle isn't just happening inside your own head? What if it's with something else entirely? We're about to dive into a really fascinating spiritual framework, one that comes straight from the Quran, and it completely reframes the entire battle.
Okay, so this quote, this really gets right to the heart of what we're unpacking here. The idea is that the urge you feel, that little voice telling you just one more time, that it isn't actually you. It's suggesting that it's some kind of external entity, and it's latching onto a vulnerability that you might not even know is there. It's a wild premise for sure. So let's see how this whole thing is supposed to work.
So, to even begin to get our heads around this, we first have to redefine the enemy. From this viewpoint, we're not just talking about, a psychological flaw or a chemical dependency. No, it's something else. And this is absolutely crucial. When we hear the word jinn, we might think of, ghosts or mythical creatures, but that's not what's being talked about here. The perspective is that we're dealing with an energetic entity, a frequency. A good way to think about it is like radio waves or Wi-Fi. They're literally all around us. We can't see them, but we know for a fact they exist and they have a very real, tangible effect on our world. And this idea actually goes back to a specific term in the Quran, mirage of fire. Now, it's described as a smokeless flame. The interpretation here isn't literal fire, but pure, non-physical energy. And this is the very substance these entities are said to be made of. And that's what allows them to operate on a completely different plane than we do. And this is where it gets really important. Because they're energetic, they can perceive things we can't. This perspective suggests they can literally see our internal state, our wounds, our insecurities, these voids inside of us that we ourselves might be totally unaware of. And it's those voids that's the gateway. Okay, so that leads to the obvious next question, right? How do these vulnerabilities, these voids, actually form in the first place? And how exactly do they get exploited? Well, the source lays out this pretty clear 5-step process. See, it all starts with some kind of hardship. Could be trauma, rejection, a big loss. This creates a real internal emptiness, and that void becomes the perfect attachment point for this energetic entity. It latches on, and then it starts to whisper solutions. It suggests you drink, or scroll, or chase that approval. And the really sneaky part? You mistake that whisper for your own thought. You follow the urge, and boom, the loop of addiction kicks in. To make this idea really clear, the source points to a powerful story from the Quran. Think about this. When Moses' mother had to put her baby boy in a river, can you imagine a greater hardship? The scripture literally says her heart became empty. A profound void was created in that moment of just absolute loss and terror. And that kind of emptiness, it demands to be filled. It just screams for a resolution. The source points out that she was right on the verge of acting impulsively, of just giving in to that desperation. But here's the key. The solution in the Quran wasn't some external distraction. No, God strengthened her heart internally. And that distinction between internal and external, that's everything. And that brings us to exactly why, from this perspective, a lot of traditional approaches to addiction just don't work. It's because they're operating on what the source calls a backwards loop. Listen to that. That's a really powerful statement. The argument here is that when you try to fix an internal problem with an external solution, it's not just that it's ineffective, it's that you're literally going against a fundamental law of reality itself. Think about it like this. There's a universal principle that the internal always comes before the external. You change on the inside, and then the outside world starts to reflect that change. But addiction works in total reverse. You're trying to use an external thing, a substance, someone's approval, a screen, to fix how you feel on the inside. It's just fundamentally backwards. And that's exactly why the fix is always temporary, and the void never really goes away. Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, the source outlines a 3-step process, and again, this is derived directly from Quranic principles, designed to heal that void from the inside out and finally dissolve the addiction. So, step 1. This one is maybe the most fundamental of all. And it's not about fighting or gritting your teeth and using willpower. Actually, it's pretty much the opposite. It's all about building awareness. The whole goal here is to create some space, some separation between you and the addictive thoughts. You basically become an observer.
The source suggests this really simple but powerful exercise. The next time that urge or a negative thought pops up, just mentally ask yourself, who said that? Just that little question creates distance. It helps you realize that voice, it's not the real you. See, the whisperer only has power when you're not paying attention. The moment you become aware of it, its grip starts to loosen.
All right, so once you've created that distance and you can see that the whisper isn't actually you, now you can move on to step 2. This is where you stop just watching the problem and you start to actively heal that void from the inside. The key here is to figure out what feeling you're really chasing. You have to ask yourself, is it safety? Is it a sense of worth? Is it love? Once you know what it is, you can start to address it internally. The source suggests things like reframing that old hardship with gratitude and then finding a chronic truth that directly cancels out that feeling of lack. So for example, if you feel unworthy, you'd focus on and internalize the verses about being created in the best of stature. You literally start to fill that void from the inside out. So you've built awareness, you've started the internal healing, and that whole process leads you to the final and maybe the most transformative step of all. This one is about changing not just what you do, but who you believe you are. It's about your entire identity. Step 3 is about a complete, total shift in your self-perception. See, the idea is, as long as you see yourself as an addict or as broken, well, that's going to be your reality. So the final step is to consciously stop identifying with that feeling of lack, and instead start operating from a place of fullness. You accept the Quranic principle that you are already whole, that you have already been given abundance. You just start to move and think and exist from that state of mind. Okay, so let's pull all this together and really look at this ultimate goal. What does it actually mean to operate from a state of fullness? Because this right here, this is the end game that those 3 steps are designed to get you to. This verse from the Quran is really the anchor for this whole idea. And notice, it's not presented as some future promise, like, we will give you abundance. It's a current reality. We have given you abundance. So from this perspective, wholeness and abundance aren't things you go out and acquire. They're your inherent natural state. Your only job is to realize it and accept it. And this is really the ultimate takeaway. When you start to operate from that place of fullness, the addiction just becomes powerless. And why is that? Because its entire sales pitch was that it could fill a void for you. But if you finally realize that the void was never actually real, that it was just a perception, a misinterpretation of a past pain, then the addiction has absolutely nothing left to offer you. Its whole premise just collapses. So this whole framework really leaves us with this question of transformation. It suggests that these so-called voids where addiction takes root, they're just places where we haven't brought awareness and truth yet. So the final thought to leave you with is this. The addiction fed on a void that was only a perception. What happens when you stop trying to fight the darkness and instead, you just fill it with light?